welcome everyone to our Wheel and Anchor webinar about Ireland, the Emerald Isle. And I'm really excited to introduce this program to everybody today because Ireland is truly a special place. I've been very fortunate to visit it a few times in my travel career, but it's been a few years since I was there the last time, and I really can't wait to go back next June. So before we get into Ireland, let's just do a little preamble for those of you who are new to Wheel and Anchor or to our webinars. What we're all about here at Wheel and Anchor is about bringing travelers together. So that's really the main theme of our community here. We are people from all across Canada and a handful as well from the US as well, who are really passionate about traveling. And so the one thing that makes all of our that all of our members have in common is that we're already all well-traveled people, and we're looking for the kind of experience that is a bit different than some of the mainstream stuff that you'll see out there, and to share that experience with other people who also appreciate the hallmarks of what the kind of travel that I like to do and I like to share with people. So that's what we're all about at Wheel and Anchor. And I have a personal mission, which is being that each of our members becomes well-traveled. And as I said just now, we're already well-traveled. But unless you've been everywhere in the world, and there of course is no such thing because that's not possible. But the more that you travel and the more you experience countries and cultures and people and connect with them. And so that's the other part of my goal for you is it just makes you a more worldly person. And, you know, who likes to be around other people who have a sense of what the rest of the world is like? And I, you know, particularly in this day and age when we see what an insular population can. Anyway, I'm not going to say too much more about that because I'm going to go down a path and I'm going to regret later. So, but my goal is that you become well-traveled and well-connected. Let's just leave it at that. So joining me this morning on our webinar about Ireland, of course, my name is Gordon. I think I know most of the people on our webinar, but if I haven't met you before, I am the founder of our community called Wheel and Anchor. Joel Curry is my co-founder and provides our technical support. And of course, we've got the lovely Paula Zarnik, who is our senior trip specialist and the one who you will most likely get on the phone if you call our office, our virtual office, because we started this trend of home working before all this COVID stuff even started. So all of us work remotely from our various locations. Our plan this morning is about taking you as people who are interested in learning all about Ireland and its incredibly rugged and spectacular landscapes. And more importantly, it's the charm of the people, because as I said before we started the webinar, there is a charm to the Irish, which is, I think, hardly matched by anybody else. A sense of humor, a lightheartedness that is really wonderful. And there's no better place to discover that than in Ireland itself, of course. And I am going to be your guide and host, in fact, on this tour as we check out Ireland. And this is the destination we're going in June of 2021. And I want to qualify, actually, we're going to be, the focus of this trip is the Republic of Ireland. So that's Southern Ireland, as opposed to Northern Ireland, although we decided just a short while ago that we are going to offer an extension as well into Northern Ireland, because it has its own special character. And of course, you know, we all know a lot about the history between Southern Ireland and Northern Ireland, Protestants, Catholics, and all the rest of this stuff. I'm not going to do the history lesson today, but the main focus of the primary part of our tour is Southern Ireland. And why go to Ireland? Well, as I say, there's a few different reasons. One, these incredible landscapes that you see, you know, the castles and the ruins, as it says here, the big statistic, 30,000 castles and ruins in Ireland. Just this Dingle Peninsula alone, which is down by Tralee in the southwestern part of Ireland, has like 2,000 archaeological sites. You really can't imagine how rich the history is of Ireland. And we'll find out some interesting facts as well about the Irish. You know, we may be familiar with Guinness, which of course is one of probably the world's most famous brewer of beer, or stout to be more accurate. And we'll visit Guinness, of course, because you can't go to Dublin without visiting Guinness. But then you'll find out that, of course, they drink more Guinness in other parts of the world than they actually do in Ireland. Of course, they drink their fair share, but they drink a lot of tea, as much or more than their counterparts in the United Kingdom. So that's what some of the many things we're going to find out as we take our trip around Ireland. As far as a map of our trip, where we're going, well, of course, we're starting off in Dublin, the capital, of course. And I want to highlight what makes this program a little bit different, because I've said this to you before, and some of our members know this, is that, these programs are not just bought off the shelf, right? We work together with our local partner. I spend time from my own experiences in crafting a program that fits in with our philosophy, which is, and one of my core philosophies is, I don't like to jump around one night here, 2 night there. We do have a couple of one night stays at the end, but we've got 4 nights in Dublin, which enables us to spend a full day just on our own, because Dublin is, like so many other cities, one of those places you just have to wander on your own. We're going to take the train across the country. Again, coach tours, all fine and dandy. We do a good chunk of this trip by coach, but it's so much fun to take the train, not to mention you can meet interesting local people. And so we'll take the train across to Galway on the west coast, and then spend a few nights there, go by coach, then down via Clare County and the Cliffs of Moher down to Killarney, where we'll visit, of course, the famous Ring of Kerry, as well as the Dingle Peninsula, before heading over to Cork, and then taking the train once again back to Dublin at the end. So the fact that we're doing a good chunk of this journey by train, I think, makes it kind of unique. So let's dive right into the day-by-day program. And as I say, if you have questions as we go along, please shoot them in the chat box. And if I don't address it right away, I will do so at the end of the program. So all questions are welcome, the more the merrier. So we're going to do this program in June. Why June? Well, Ireland isn't exactly known for fabulous weather, given its geographic location on the Atlantic Ocean. So, but June is about as good as it gets. And it's not the peak summer season of July and August, where it's just, tends to be packed, particularly the touristy aspect of the trip that we're going to do. So we'll arrive into June, of course, into Dublin on the 6th of June of next year. So it's exactly 1 year from now. Great connections out of Canada, particularly Toronto. You can fly nonstop into Dublin, but from other cities in Canada, you can fly a number of different ways to get in there. So it's no big problem to get to Dublin. Once we arrive, again, this program, like many of our programs, we've set up for private transfers from the airport. Once again, the reason that I like to do that is because that way you can choose what routing that you want to take. Maybe you're going to be going to some other part of Europe before the trip or after the trip, or you're going to go to London or what have you. So we will arrange to pick you up and bring you to the hotel. It'll be our meeting point for this trip. And we're staying at a lovely little spot right in the center of Dublin, where you can walk to pretty much everything, depending on how avid a walker you are. So we're going to spend the first day. We'll arrive in probably around midday, and we'll have a chance to just walk around and experience that vibe of Ireland's capital all on our own. There's so many things to see that we can't even cover them in the 4 nights that we're there. For those that are, literary fanatics, we're just around the corner from the James Joyce Museum. There's so much to see just by walking around. Our next day will be our first full day in Ireland. We're going to do sightseeing for a good chunk of the day. We're going to walk around on foot as well as by coach, so that we can get in as much as we can. Some of the things we're going to see, of course, like Marion Square with these beautiful Georgian buildings all around. Not to mention, of course, Trinity College, which is, Ireland's most famous university, with this spectacular and massive library that houses, among other things, the Book of Kells, which is, of course, a gospel of the New Testament. So we're going to see tons of things as we walk around. And in the afternoon, right away, we won't spend long in Ireland without getting to sample some Guinness by visiting the distillery, seeing what it's all about. I must confess, I'm not a huge fan of stout. That's my personal preference. Pretty much everybody else I know loves it. So you got to give it a try. You know how they drink it. It takes 2 minutes to pour. It's lukewarm. when they serve it. And the interesting thing about Guinness is that it's actually not even as strong as Canadian beer. It sort of averages around 4.2% alcohol. So that's why they say you can have an extra pint of Guinness without having had too many. And we'll gather together for a welcome dinner on our first night in Ireland. We'll then have a whole day at leisure. And so again, part of the rationale in our trips is in getting an orientation of the city, in this case Dublin, and then having the chance to go off and do things on your own. Many of our members like to plan in advance. Or maybe you have an Irish relative you want to visit, whatever the case may be, you have the day at your leisure. One of the things that I will likely do, subject to discussing with the group, because as those of you who've traveled with me before, sometimes I like to do things a little bit on the fly. That makes travel more exciting. So we can go up to HOWTH Harbour, visit the castle there, wonderful views of the north coast of Dublin, and it's really quite accessible. We can literally just hop on public transportation to get up there. Whatever you get up to for the day, we're going to meet back later in the afternoon to make a visit to Jameson Distillery, where we get to try Irish whiskey. So if you want to go on a Scotch whiskey tour, we have another trip for that, but this is all about the Irish whiskey, which of course has its own distinct character to it. We'll have dinner tonight in the Temple Bar area. That's sort of the entertainment district, if you will, of Dublin, right along the River Liffey. And from there, we'll leave you to your own devices to get home. No, I'm just kidding. You could actually walk back from the Temple Bar area to the hotel. As I say, we're super well situated. We're then going to spend the next day doing a little excursion outside of Dublin. Again, this is not something that every tour necessarily encompasses. Kilkenny certainly is usually a part of a lot of trips, but the Wicklow Mountains and the whole landscape around this area to the south of Dublin is truly beautiful. Gives us our first glimpse of this, the rolling hill green countryside. They had movies that are filmed in this area, and Game of Thrones, all this kind of thing gives you a bit of a flavor. I think Braveheart as well, they've shot some scenes here. This is where you start to see the Ireland that you sort of conjure up in your mind. Kilkenny itself, a medieval town that has a spectacular castle that's goes back to the 13th century or something like that. So we'll spend a good chunk of the day. We'll have lunch down in Kilkenny, and it'll be, as I say, the first chance for us to get a little bit of the countryside, the smaller town feel of Ireland. So after our fourth night in Dublin, this is when we hop on the train. It's about a 2.5-hour ride out to Galway. So on the west coast, we're going to go travel right across the country by train, very comfy trains, and we'll arrive in probably early to mid-afternoon, and be in this truly charming Irish town, which is in a place called Hooker County. So don't misinterpret that. The Hooker is actually named after a boat. There's a boat that was called Hooker. So it's not it's not about rugby. It's not about ladies of leisure. But Galway is the center of this particular area. That is, the nickname is Hooker County. So we'll have the rest of the afternoon at leisure when we're in Galway, and then we'll head out the next day to visit an area called Connemara, which is up to the northwest of Galway. And this is when the really spectacular landscapes come into play here. So whether it's mountains and beaches and bogs, just one thing after another. A highlight that we'll do this day is going out on the Killarry Fjord, where we'll do a lovely hour-and-a-half trip, passing mussel farms and salmon farms. And it's a fjord, like you'll see fjords fjords in Norway, and it culminates in the mouth of the fjord, where if we're really lucky, oftentimes you get to see even dolphins out there. Later on that day, we're going to hit up Kylemore Abbey. There's, I think, a picture of it in the brochure that we'll send out with this copy of this webinar, which was a spectacular country lodge that they turned into a Benedictine abbey, and effectively a girls' school. So, and it is known for having one of the most beautiful gardens in Ireland. So we'll end up back in Galway for dinner. And the following day, once again, we have all to ourselves to either explore the town itself. And, you know, there's lots to do in Galway. You can wander around the city. They have this converted railway line, so you can walk the line, as they say, there across the Loch Italia. They call them lochs, just similar to in Scotland, spelt a bit differently, but basically like a loch, like an inland lake or a sea. And there's some wonderful walks you can do around Galway. Or we might just head out to the ARAN Islands, which is a group of 3 islands out off the coast of Galway. And there's a couple of different ways to do this for those that are interested. First of all, why you would go there, you can see that a very unique landscape of slate formation, sort of, it's depicted well in the picture what it looks like. It has almost a mystical or spiritual sort of atmosphere here in the ARAN Islands. And I must confess, I have not been to the ARAN Islands. I wanted to go, but the weather was really quite inclement the last time I was in the western part of Ireland. And so it's one of those things where we'll probably decide last minute. If you're adamant about going, we can arrange something in advance. You can take a ferry out there, which, you know, by the time you get out there and back, doesn't leave you a ton of time, or you can actually fly on a small little aircraft. So for those of you who don't mind flying in small planes, you can fly out. It takes only about 10 minutes to get out to the ARAN Islands, but really, really spectacular. So after we've spent our 3 nights in Galway, we're going to make our way down the west coast of Ireland and towards Killarney. And here we'll visit the Cliffs of Moher, which is arguably, next to Dublin itself, probably the most visited place in all of Ireland, certainly in the western part of Ireland. These 200-meter cliffs are, well, the picture sort of says it all, teeming with bird life, amazing views out. If the weather is clear, you can actually see all the way out over to the ARAN Islands. You know, they've filmed movies here, Harry Potter. You know, it's really as dramatic and special to stand on the edge of these cliffs without getting too close, of course. So after visiting the Cliffs of Moher, we're going to continue down through what's called Clare County and make our way to Kerry County, which is where you'll find Killarney, and where we'll get to spend the next few nights of our adventure in Ireland. And in Killarney, there's, you know, Killarney is a charming little Western Irish town in and of itself. But it's really about a couple of different things. First of all, the Ring of Kerry. So you may have heard this before, but this is the famous drive around the very southwestern part of Ireland off of Killarney. It's about 180 kilometers in total duration, and is one of the most scenic drives in a country that is frankly full of scenic drives. There's waterfalls along the way. I mean, all of the special scenery that you know would expect to see in a country like this, but also some very special architectural pieces, like, for example, Muckross House, which you see here, part of an estate that is adjacent to a very serene and beautiful lake of the same name, with amazing gardens. And this is sort of indicative of the type of thing that we see, you know, all the way through Ireland. Is just masterpieces of historical buildings everywhere. It's just fantastic. So we will spend another full day touring around the area from Killarney, in particular going to the Dingle Peninsula. So again, a lot of trips will pass through Ireland and, you know, spend a night or two in Killarney, and everybody does the Ring of Kerry, but not as many people do the Dingle Peninsula. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to include it on the tour, because scenery-wise, it's equally as beautiful as what you'll see on the Ring of Kerry, but there's just a lot fewer tourists here. And so, again, we'll spend the same thing, you know, the better part of the day touring around. What is particularly notable about Dingle is the fact that they have something like 2,000 historically significant archaeological sites on the peninsula. Of course, we're not going to see them all, but it gives you a flavor for how important, historically important was that Ireland was. I mean, some of these sites date back some 6,000 years. So some of the oldest settlements that you'll find anywhere in Europe. So after spending yet one more night in Killarney, so we'll have a total of 3 nights in Killarney, and then we'll head over to Cork, which is one of the larger of the cities in Ireland. Cork is perhaps most famous for the Blarney Castle. But part of the reason I wanted to visit Cork, and not just visit it, because we could, it's only about an hour away from Killarney, so you could do a day trip and come back. But Cork is actually locally known as a foodie destination. It's all about the food, and for those of you who know me, I love to ensure that we have a great culinary experience on our tours, and so they have they have multiple very interesting markets where they've got Irish cheeses and oysters, of course, from along the coastline, and they have a butter market. I remember the last time I was in Cork. Well, vaguely remember, it was quite a long time ago, but I don't recall having seen this butter market where they actually used to have a butter exchange, like a stock exchange for butter, if you can believe it. And Irish butter is simply amazing. So it's like literally butter and bread and the best thing. So any event, we'll actually do a foodie tour through Cork. So we'll spend a couple of hours visiting some of these things and sampling some of the delights that make it such a well-known foodie destination for the Irish. After we do our overnight, actually the next day is when we'll visit Blarney Castle itself. Why do you go to Blarney Castle? You go to visit to kiss the Blarney Stone. I'm sure you've all heard the phrase about kissing the Blarney Stone, which gives you 7 years of the gift of gab. I did actually kiss the Blarney Stone myself. It was a lot more than 7 years ago, more like 30. Well, I still seem to have the gift of gab. At least that's what people tell me. So anyway, that being said, we'll move right along. And before we head out of Cork to go back to Dublin, we're going to make a couple of neat stops. First of all, at the Port of Cobb, which is a charming little town on the coast. And its claim to fame, of course, is that it's the last port of call for the ill-fated Titanic. So it's kind of neat and a little bit, how should we say? Just it's a very eerie feeling to think, all of those people that were on the Titanic and that ended up being on a one-way voyage. We'll also have we'll visit a little town called Kinsale, and we'll have a terrific seafood lunch, and then from here we hop on the train back to Dublin, where we'll spend our final night, and then we'll head back home. So we'll, as I say, spend one more night in the center of Dublin at the same hotel, and from there we'll either head back home or and we just literally decided to do this because a couple of our members who were anticipating this program said, hey, yeah, but what about Northern Ireland? So it's not in our brochure yet, but we're just compiling the information for those that are interested to see a little bit of Northern Ireland. You can continue, head on up to Belfast. We're going to do a 3-night extension. And the good thing about Northern Ireland is you can pretty much see everything within an easy day's drive. And the most important site of all, as far as I'm concerned, at least that was my impression, is the Giant's Causeway, which is right on the northern coast. And it's all of this hexagonal rock formation that is seriously like the aliens built it. So anyway, we'll have a few days in Belfast for those that want to stick on with us. So, all right, let me get into the details because Joel is reminding me we need to keep this moving. So our program will be again in June of 2021, and our pricing for all of the land arrangements that we described just now will be $59.90 Canadian dollars in double, or $73.40 in single occupancy. And the inclusions, as always, we pretty much include everything. As a rule, we generally do a breakfast and either a lunch or dinner every day, as I think most of you will know, because we find 3 meals a day is just too much. and our train tickets, all of our guiding with some lovely local Irish hosts, all part of the program. So the only thing that we need to look after in addition is, of course, your international airfare, trip cancellation insurance, and so on. So all spelled out in great detail in our brochure. As far as airfare is concerned, we, of course, can help you out with that. Just to give you a sense of airfares for the program, actually, at the moment, airfares are even less than that range shown there. But on average, historically speaking, we find that they sort of end up in this range depending on where you're coming from. And we can, of course, facilitate that from anywhere in Canada. So it's just about question time. And I see a bunch of questions have already come in. So let us address those, and let me go to my question box for those who emailed them in some questions. So let's see. First of all, Alina asked, how does our luggage get from one place to another? Do we need to carry it onto trains ourselves? Yes, we do need to carry the luggage with us ourselves. So we will provide assistance. So between the host and a local guide, we'll make sure that we facilitate getting the luggage on and off. The good thing is we don't have to make any transfers or anything. It's pretty straightforward. But we do recommend that you travel somewhat light. You don't need a lot of stuff for Ireland. There's no formal wear or so on required. If you have one suitcase, we will definitely help to manage that for you. Then John asked, does it rain in Ireland in June? John, it rains in Ireland every month. So it would be highly unlikely that we could do this whole trip without seeing a day of rain. So you definitely need to bring an umbrella and a shell. But June is as about as dry. Well, that's the wrong word for Ireland. But the weather is as nice as in June as is in any months. Susan asked, why didn't you include the Northern Ireland part of the program? Well, Susan, yeah, it's a good question. We didn't include it, first of all, because for this, for the distance away that this trip is for Canada, we generally aim to make it around a 2-week tour. And I don't think that to do all of Ireland, including Northern Ireland, in within 14 days is really justified. It doesn't do the other parts of Ireland justice. So we said, okay, we're going to focus on the Republic of Ireland. And for those that really want to see Northern Ireland, we'll build it in as an extension program. And so Diane asked, what's the cost of the extension? We haven't worked that out exactly yet, but I'm going to guess that it's going to be around $1,000, $1,200 for 3 nights, transportation, some meals, trip up to the Giant's Causeway, and so on and so forth. So that's where we will probably end up, and we should have that information within about a week or so. So anybody that is interested in the program, will send that out to you as well. Susan asked, are there any special events or entertainment in Dublin? Well, listen, Dublin is a town of music and entertainment, and it's about as lively a city as you'll find everywhere. There's always something going on. In terms of special events, what comes to mind is, I mentioned about James Joyce before, but there is a festival they do in June called Bloomsday. I don't think they have announced the dates for next year, but it is oriented all around when Joyce set the work called Ulysses. So that is a special event that happens every year in June. That's one thing I do recall seeing that is coming up. Good. I think, let's see, are there any other questions, Joel, that I haven't seen? Good. Yes. And we have a request for the webinar. Yes, we will definitely send a copy of the webinar out to everyone who has registered for this. So that's it. Thank you all very much for attending. If you have any questions at all, as usual, please drop me a note, either by email, give us a call. We're always happy to answer your questions. Thanks for joining us on our little journey through Ireland, and I hope to see and hear from you all very, very soon. Have a good day.